is another of our visits on Fred Hunter's Alabama. And full disclosure, Greg Fowler, who is our guest today, and I have spent the last 30 minutes before we ever started talking with you, talking about our shared backgrounds in Florence and Myrtle Beach and the PD of South Carolina, and how our trails crossed. And I guess, Greg, that leads us to where your trails crossed with a little country music group that hails from this part of the world. Tell us the Reader's Digest version of Greg's life story.
Oh yeah, that'll be hard to do. I have a little bit of Southern Baptist preacher in me. I tend to get a little long-winded, But no, I grew up in the low country of South Carolina, a little town called Loris, South Carolina, and this was part of the conversation we just had,
right.
Which Fred rode a bull, ladies and gentlemen, at the Loris Lions Club Rodeo, and that's he can tell you about that.
I didn't ride him long, but I got on him.
My gosh, you got on him though. That says a lot. But anyway, I grew up around Loris, and then I grew up around those tobacco fields there. I worked in tobacco in the summer, and then we would later move to Florence, South Carolina. My dad was involved in the tire business, initially in the body shop business in Loris, and then on to Florence. He worked at Palmetto Tire Service. I met my wife, future wife Shirley there. Went to high school together. Got married. It's that good story.
And then I met a girl.
And then I met a girl. That's right. So anyway, I spent my years mostly around Florence, going to high school there, but I always wanted to be in radio. That was always what I wanted to do. I don't know really where it came from. It's like you. I don't know where this happens, or how it happened, but I did. So eventually I would get a job in part-time at WHSC in Hartsville, South Carolina, a little AM station there. Those are great people, and they gave me an opportunity, and I was terrible, but I had desire. It's like
right.
I wasn't good, but I had desire. And so one thing led to another, and I always wanted to be not only in radio, but I wanted to get to Myrtle Beach because there was a station there, WTGR, Tiger Radio, and I would listen to it as I was growing up when we'd go to the beach. And I said, man, I got to work there. It was an a top 40 station, and they had a sister station, WKZQ. And so initially I get a shot. I go to Myrtle Beach. I am on WTGR. I was there about 3 months. It didn't really work out. I just didn't get on with the general manager at the time, bless his heart. But eventually I would come back and work for WKZQ under the guidance of a guy by the name of Bill Hennessy, who was my mentor in radio. And that's where I was, and that's how I got involved in Meeting Alabama initially. And I'll tell you a story on that. When I was at WTGR on my first run into Myrtle Beach on the AM there on Tiger Radio, we're reading, and you're familiar with this, we had these little index cards where you would read a 15-second spot. It wasn't recorded. You just read them live. And I remember it said, tonight at the Bowery, 50-cent draft beer, ladies free till 9, and featuring the sounds of wild country. And so I read that thing about 20, 30 times over the course of a couple of weeks, and I asked Bill Hennessy, who would later be my general manager at WKZ, I said, Bill, wild country? I said, I've never been to the Bowery. I said, wild country, who's, I don't know anything about them. And he said, I'll never forget, he said, one day you will.
Wow.
And I thought, whatever. And little did I know that it would be my life. And that's strange, but it's true. But anyway, Alabama, we promoted them. We were on the FM. We were a top 40 FM. It was great. It was 24 hours, and we had a lot of fun. But the band was at the Bowery, and they were trying to get something going. They were out going places. They were cutting their own albums, selling them off the stage of the Bowery, writing classic songs. I mean, My Home's in Alabama, Tennessee River, Laid It Down. I mean, all these songs were written long before they ever had a record deal on RCA. Anyway, they were trying to get something going. No, nobody wanted anything to do with it. Nope, sorry, we don't need bands. Bands break up. We're not into that. And if you'll remember, back in the day, you had a lead singer, male or female.
Right.
And then you had the band.
Right.
I mean, now you were in Austin, It's different in Texas.
Yes, sir.
In Texas, bands are everywhere, and they're really, really good.
Right.
But pretty much in country music at the time, traditional country music, it was a lead singer and a backup band. Everybody had the leisure suits, and they were back there, you know.
Porter Wagner and the Wagon Masters.
Conway Twitty. I mean, Loretta Lynn. I mean, everybody did it. And Alabama came on the scene there. Now, you got these guys. Now, this is 78, 79. Waylon and Willie had kind of busted out of their vibe, too, with that outlaw country movement.
Right.
And they were doing things differently, even though both of them had tried it in Nashville and failed miserably and had to go back home to Texas and start all over again. And they came back with a whole different approach to their brand of country music. So anyway, Alabama's on the heels of that, and Southern rock movement was going on too, and they're playing at the Bowery. They got those, much like they dress today, the jeans, the boots, the hat, cowboy hat from time to time, but the beard, long hair. And labels were going, man, I don't
These guys were not wearing nudie suits.
They were not. And it was not something that they thought, this is not marketable. I don't think that, no, we're not. No, and then, but once the music, they finally got their big break. And I'm passing over some things. They had some problems along the way with management, and it was not good. But they finally got their big break performing on the New Faces show in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where all the radio DJs come to Nashville, and they showcase new artists there who don't have a record deal.
Right.
And these record label reps are there too, and they see this it's like a showcase.
Right.
And you don't just get on there; you have to work your way in there somehow. But they did, and they were knocked out. I mean, the labels. They said, "Who are they? Where have they been on now? Where have they been? You know,
the Bowery,
exactly right." And playing at Chiefs Lounge in Greenville, South Carolina, in the winter when the Bowery shut down after Labor Day.
I remember Jeff telling me once that we were talking when they had just opened the Alabama Theater in Myrtle Beach, and he said it used to be the day after Labor Day, you could walk out here on Ocean Boulevard and shoot a shotgun down the street and not hit a soul. So right. They had to leave the beach to go and play.
You did. There was nobody there. Once the tourists would come in on the season of Myrtle Beach was pretty much the Canadians. We had Can-Am days.
Right.
You're part of all. And the Canadians would come down in February, and it would be cold. I mean, honest to gosh, I have so much respect. I've been to Canada a lot in my travels, but that water temperature was, I don't know what it was, but they were out there in it. And I'm thinking, this is amazing to me. So we had Can-Am Week in the city of Myrtle Beach, had the big Can-Am days. It was a big festival, like 2 weeks, I think. And then once the Canadians left, then all the golfers showed up.
Right. It's golf season.
Golf season, man. And it was on and on and on. And that went on till Easter weekend, pretty much, which was usually late March, early April. And then there was that big Easter weekend where all the kids would show up, and it was crazy. But then it was over. And then it was a bit of a lull there until school was out. And then from that period on, when school's out in, May or whatever, it was wide slam open until Labor Day. And then once Labor Day came,
like somebody shut off the tap.
And it was good and bad. It was great because that's when all the business was booming and people were in town and all that. But it was for the locals, that's how they made their money. But if you live there year round, it was also refreshing when everybody left town because now you can go back and eat in a restaurant and there's no lines and there's no, you
can drive down Kings Highway.
Yeah, you could. You didn't have to battle somebody, for a parking spot or whatever. But anyway, Alabama, they finally get their opportunity. I'm still at Myrtle Beach, and we talked about maybe someday doing something. And they were signed in April 21st, I believe it was, in 1980. And Tennessee River, they're still playing at the Bowery, fulfilling their obligation. They were going to play through the summer, or part of the summer at the Bowery. And they were still fulfilling their obligation in 1980, July of 1980. They've already been signed to RCA. RCA takes Tennessee River and basically did a light remix on it because they'd already written it years ago. Randy had. And they released it, and that song went to #1 on Billboard's country music charts. and they were still packing up their stuff to leave the Bowery. They were still the bar band. And then once they went on the road, RCA put them out, I think, with Ronnie Millsap. And it just, after that, it just blew up. And then Teddy called me and said, hey, man, you want to come, would you like to come work with us? Because we could use some help out here doing something. I said, sure. So I'll never forget it. My wife was ironing clothes. I said, yeah, you want to take a shot at this? She said, well, if you think it'll work, we'll do it. So we packed up. We put all our stuff in a U-Haul, a truck at least, and sold our little mobile home we were living in, and moved to Myrtle Beach, from Myrtle Beach to Fort Payne, Alabama, and been here since 1982.
So we're talking, by the way, with Greg Fowler, who has been, I guess, your title, Greg, we didn't get to that. I'm sure there's been several iterations on your title.
I don't know what it is.
In effect, you've been the longtime manager for Alabama.
Well, the management side of it, and I would try to correct everybody when they'd say that, because I never was the true manager. I was tour manager. I've written songs with the band. I was day-to-day on-the-road manager, and there's a lot of stuff that happens on the road that doesn't happen in an office, as you well know.
I got you. It's like the old, I think a famous general once said, no battle plan ever survives the second shot.
That's exactly right.
we got a plan here, boys, but we may have to change it.
Yeah, but those titles, and I never was much on titles. It was, for us, it was always, and it was the same way with the band. It's just whatever needs to be done, let's just do it. Let's figure it out, And we had our offices here in Fort Payne, especially when things got really rolling. And I mean, when I say it blew up, it absolutely was unbelievable. I mean, they were selling as many concert tickets as any rock act performing at any given time. We would put shows on sale. I'll give you an example. Norman, Oklahoma. It ain't the South. It's Norman, Oklahoma.
Right.
We'd put tickets on sale. They would sell out in no time. And back then there was no ticket mat. There was you couldn't go online. There was no online. There wasn't any of that back then. You could call in your order, or try to. You'd have to mail your stuff in. You'd have to, and then wait to get your tickets back or whatever. Or you could go to the actual arena, the venue itself, and get in line, and people would camp out forever. I don't mean overnight. I'm talking about days. They'd camp out and wait for tickets to go on sale so they could buy. I think we put a limit of 10 tickets at one time because scalping was really bad, and they were trying to buy up as many tickets as they could and then sell them for 15, 20 times the value of the ticket. So it was crazy. But getting back to Norman, Oklahoma as an example, we would have a matinee. Let's say it's a Sunday. We'd do a 4 o'clock show, and the arena in Norman, 13,000 people, whatever it seats, would be totally sold out within hours. And then we'd have a second show, the night show, and it would sell out. So we'd do 26,000 people on a Sunday in
Norman, Oklahoma.
In Norman, Oklahoma. And that's just one example. I mean, in Richmond, we did our promoter at the time, Keith Fowler, which no relation to me, but I loved him. He was amazing, little guy. We called him Short Man. And Keith was legendary in booking country acts. He was one of the first to put Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn together on stage, and just an amazing man. And anyway, he was Alabama's promoter, and it was just I love some of his stories. He was from King, North Carolina, again, tobacco country, and he was every bit of what you would imagine him to be. He was he was mainly a tobacco farmer that got into the promoting business, is what happened. But anyway, we did so many shows, like Charlotte, North Carolina, same deal. We'd sell it out. They could stay in Charlotte probably for weeks at a time and sell out that Coliseum every night. It was an amazing. And meanwhile, the songs were going to number one after another. We had 21 number ones. I say we, and I say that I'm not on stage, but collectively, it's always been we. We've done this. We got to go here. We got to record. We got to fly to Oklahoma. We got to fly to, because it was always, and still is for me, it's always been like it's a family thing. It's not like yes, I'm an employee of Alabama, and I've been with them off and on for 40 years, but it's our kids grew up together here. They went to school together here. Our families were together here, So it's when, and my home's not in Alabama. My home's in South Carolina. It was in South Carolina. It always will. But, you got that root back there. It's going to be your home. But my home's definitely in Alabama now because I've been here 40 years, and I love it here. I love this town. I love this community. I love the people. I love the fact that I'm able to get in my car and be anywhere I want to be in this area within 10, 15 minutes. And I'm not sitting at a stoplight, for that length of time just trying to get my turn to go somewhere,
Well, you mentioned family, and that literally was true, and then just became an extension.
Yeah,
because the three boys literally were family.
Yes,
and a lot of that sound, that harmony, evolved from growing up in church.
Yes.
and listening to that kind of church music. Talk a little bit about the magic of, because I remember the first time I was listening to the radio. I was living in Tuscaloosa, working at a radio station, and they say the mark of a great song is you remember where you were and what you were doing exactly when you heard it for the first time. Well, I'm listening to the radio and kind of half listening, and then I hear this guy say, "Somewhere high on Lookout Mountain, I'll just smile with pride and say my home's in Alabama." And I went, who in the world is that? And so I go in, and the album's there, and I asked the DJ that was on at the time, I said, "Who is that song you played?" He goes, "Oh, that's a new album." And he showed me the album.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, I started looking, and I called my mother, and I said, "Have you heard about this?" And she knew all about it.
Oh, did she?
She said, "Oh yeah, that's them boys from out there on the mountain." She always referred to them as those boys from out there on the mountain. So it's like being a prophet in your own country,
right?
And I think that's part of. I talked to Randa once, and she said that was part of her upbringing, was that her dad made the decision, I'm going to let my children grow up, and that's in the words of one of the songs, where my daddy taught me to swim.
Yeah.
And she said over the years she'd really come to appreciate the fact that their family wasn't raised in and around the Nashville crowd, that they were here at home. Home has always been a fundamental part. I mean, I know it got a lot bigger than home, as you described, but that's been a fundamental part. What was the magic of Alabama?
I think initially, and I wasn't here then when they first got together. They first started as it wasn't even official, I don't guess. I guess you could say it is how it started, was on a Sunday afternoon. Jeff Cook was, Randy's put it this way, Jeff Cook was a famous local musician. He played with a lot of different bands in Fort Payne, and they were rock bands. Jeff Cook, and Jeff was really into to rock and roll. He was that guy. But he played with a lot of different bands. In Fort Payne, I've been told, had a lot of really good local bands during that period of time, a lot of them. And they were in competition with one another. All of them were kids. They were high school kids or whatever. But they were in competition with one another. And Jeff played with a number of them. And he also was a tech geek. I mean, he'd have the recording stuff. He'd have everything, which would eventually lead to Cook Sound Studios here in Fort Payne. But anyway, one Sunday afternoon, Teddy and Randy showed up at Jeff's house and said, "Hey, man, we know you got some stuff, as I understand it, and you want to get together and play a couple."
And they're cousins. I mean, they're literally family.
Yeah, and over here on Sanders Avenue in Fort Payne, where Jeff was living at the time, and they just sat down, man, and just started singing a little bit and playing a little bit, and they thought, this is pretty good. This is not bad. And so I think they felt that there was something really unique in the way they just could honestly, naturally harmonize and develop their own kind of a sound. And they thought, we might get together, might do something. So then there was a talent show over here in Section, Alabama.
Right.
This was 1969. And they entered it. And Teddy Teddy played drums, but he didn't have any drums, so he borrowed them. He borrowed some drums from whoever the headliner was. I think it was Jack Green or somebody who was band. So, yeah, you can borrow my drum. And so they win the talent contest. They win it. And the trip was, the prize was a trip to the Grand Ole Opry.
Yep.
And so they did, and they went up and did that. And that was their first, I guess, official rendering of performing together. And then later on, it would develop that Bennett Vartanian, who was one of the original members of the group, was the original drummer, actually. There was a group here in Fort Payne called the Malibus, and really great musician. These folks still live around here. But anyway, Bennett Vartanian was a member of the Malibus at this point. He heard that there was an opening in Myrtle Beach at the Bowery because the Malibus had played over there, but they weren't going to be going back. And so the guys said, well, maybe we can go over there and play. And so they did, and that's how it started. Randy was still at Jacksonville State. He didn't want to leave because he was really short, I think half a semester from graduation. So they filled in for him over there, and Randy eventually joined him once he graduated. But the real shocker was when they got there, instead of going over thinking they were going to go in as a four-piece band, and they were the backup band for a guy they already had over there who was going to be the lead singer. But eventually one thing led to another, and that all took care of itself. And then for 7 summers, they just wore it out over there playing for tips 6 nights a week at the Bowery.
What's the line for the song? Playing for tips and watered drinks.
That's it. Tar Top. And Randy wrote that song, Tar Top. It was that leads. One thing leads to something else. Have you noticed that?
Right.
We had 21 number one. Again, back to Alabama had 21 number one records in a row, consecutive number ones. Never been done before. Sonny James had 19, and that was the record. Alabama went to 21, and the guy said, "Look, this. I get it. We can keep putting out hit songs, which they were, and we know we've got more that we can release that would hopefully go to number one. But Randy initially said, I wrote a song for you, Teddy and Jeff, and also for Bennett Vartanian. The song's called Tar Top. It was never supposed to be a single release. That was never an intention. It was not. It was recorded by Randy's writing. He wrote it. It was recorded as a gift, basically, to be given to Teddy. It was
an autobiography of the band.
That's exactly right. But it was never going to be a radio. It was long. It was quite long too. And so when it came time to release the next single, Tar Top was on the album. Randy, I want to release that. And the label guys go, man, I don't think so. We got a real thing going here. We can release this song or this song. We know that'll slam dunk. Radio loves it. They want it. Randy said, no, I don't do that. I want to release this song. And he said, well, all right, drink your poison. But it's a great song, but it's not going to have mass appeal because there are things in here that they're going to have a hard time relating to. So I don't care, release it. And it went to like number 7, I think.
Right.
So that broke the string. And after that, okay, we're good. And then after that song, we had like 9 more number ones in a row.
Right.
So it wasn't like something that, oh man, I guess they've lost their no, it never was that. It was just the fact that let's take a break from all this.
Yeah.
What's the next? And let's just do something. And getting back to their roots, let's do something that we want to do in our own way. We know what we can do. We know what we have done. Obviously, the truth speaks for itself. They're winning Entertainer of the Year. I mean, they were the first group to ever win Entertainer of the Year 3 times in a row from the CMA, Country Music Association, 5 times from the ACM. I mean, and the awards were just coming in, and we were on the road 250 days a year.
Right, which is
and so it was a constant. It was like the hamster wheel. And RCA, it didn't matter if you sold 5 million at platinum, 5 million albums, or 3 million, or 4 million, and they were. Every year, RCA wanted a new album. Every year. every single year.
And they're touring this whole time.
When you're touring, in fact, Mountain Music, I'll give you an example. Mountain Music, Roll On. There's an intro to Roll On. It's a bus. It's
right.
It's supposed to be a truck, but it's actually a bus. and our bus driver, Buddy McKenzie at the time goes, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the bus out here in the parking lot at the studio, Music Mill Studio. Harold Shedd was the producer. And we're going to put the bus out here. We're going to crank it up, and we're going to use the sound effect. We're going to run the mic cable out here. We're going to actually get the sound. Okay, so we do it. And that is the lead of Mountain Music. How about you? And that was Bob Martin that does the voice on that. He was one of our road guys. So when you hear Mountain Music in there, how about you, Alabama? And so we were, again, homegrown stuff here.
Right.
And but these were the kind of things that we did. But what we would do, we would literally leave, let's say we were in Cincinnati, right to the Music Mill Studios. They'd go into the studio and maybe try to record a couple of songs because we had to have that album.
Right.
Deadline. And then we get right back on the bus and we're going again to Pittsburgh or Abilene or wherever we were going. And we might get as far as Nashville, but we wouldn't even make it to Fort Payne because we had to turn around and go again because we had shows to do.
Never made it. It literally was a life on the road again.
Yeah, and everybody had kids, and it was really, Mark didn't, of course, but at the time, but everybody had kids. And so you were really trying to find that time,
Right.
so that you could be here. And especially, I know Randy was very adamant about wanting to see his kids, and they were in sports, and he wanted to be here for that. And it was just always this pressure to satisfy the demands of the industry, the promoters, the record label, the award shows, the fans, which was great. Don't get me wrong.
Right,
I mean, this
right.
was a good problem to have, but it also took so much away from your personal life, from your home life, from your time. And that was and he'll tell you, that was one of the reasons that Randy had a spell. We call that in the South. A spell is when
Yes,
it's
sir.
not really, it's not something that you're defined by having, but he didn't know, and it was stress. It took him out, man. It really hit him hard, and it was just this constant go,
Right.
go. And being the front man, obviously the spotlight shines brightest on you.
Right.
Collectively a group, but he's doing 90% of the lead vocals and everything. But it all had a price, and they're still out. They're still touring right now. Randy and Teddy are out there they just got back this weekend from Hollywood, Florida, and their shows are selling out again. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But it was a long road, in between leaving Myrtle Beach and where we are today in this studio now. But they're still doing it. We lost Jeff, of course. But,
Right.
But Teddy and Randy are still flying the flag, carrying on the tradition.
But one way to come, and there again, you say, okay, what else? It's an always what's next.
Yeah.
And tell me how that or did that or how it birthed June Jam. How
June
did that
Jam came
come
about. Ironically, June Jam came about because, and this was just before I got here, 1981. Alabama is absolutely on fire. I mean, they're fresh out of the Bowery. They've got their record going. They've already had a couple of number one. And I mean, it's just literally blowing up. I mean, they've become the hottest thing in country music. And excuse me. So there's a promoter. I don't even know the name. I have no idea who it was.
Right.
They say, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. As I understand it, what the story's been told to me, because I'm not here yet. We're going to have a benefit concert. You guys are unbelievable. We're going to do it at high school football stadium right here in Fort Payne, Alabama. We're going to take the money that we generate and we're going to give it to the school system, and it'll be so cool. The guy said, okay, well, that's what we'll do. And the promoters obviously left town with the money. There was no money distributed to anybody.
Right.
And that was 81. That is not counted as a June Jam.
Okay.
So after that happened, obviously the band's mad. They're really pissed off. They're embarrassed.
Right.
They've been shorted. They're angry.
And they're in front of their hometown.
Yeah, right here in their home. Yes, right here. So that's it. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it our way. We're going to, again, back to Alabama, we're going to do it our way, on our terms, and we're going to be in control of it. So in 1982, on a 40-acre field behind Fort Payne High School, not the stadium, but behind the high school, was June Jam #1. Officially. 82. Oh, I was 81. No, that one, that doesn't count. 82 was the first one. We had 30,000 people were there, and it honestly, the stage was probably, it looked like you might as well put 3 or 4 flatbed trailers together. There was really no production whatsoever. 30,000 people were out there.
This was not a Kiss show.
No. And I'm trying. It was like Janie Fricke, the Oak Ridge Boys. I think Lee Greenwood may have been on that one. But anyway, that was how it started, and then it began. And then Gaynell Pitts would come in later, who did a fantastic job with the Jam, and she would eventually have a staff of 4 or 5 people, and that's all they did full time, year round. We would come in. We'd be on again. Now we're still. This is the heyday of Alabama.
Right.
We'd be out touring, doing those 200-plus dates a year or more. We'd come ripping in here, and we'd spend a week of activities here. And then even then, we'd have, after the night the Jam was over, we'd close the door on the bus, and we would sometimes be booked in Calhoun, Georgia for a Sunday matinee the next day.
Wow.
But we had all sorts of events back then. But anyway, getting back.
Had softball games. I remember that.
Oh, we had a beauty pageant, a parade, softball game. There was a soccer tournament going on at the time. The mills were really booming back then, the sock mills here in Fort Payne. They all had their own events that they participated in. The Jam, of course, Songwriters Showcase event. Teddy had events. Jeff had his bass tournament. And it was just a full, the golf tournament, Randy's golf tournament, which benefited the Alabama Sheriff's Boys and Girls Ranchers.
Right.
The softball game was to benefit John Crowell's Big Oak Ranch. We had a tremendous amount of support from, especially Mac Cooper. I will specifically mention him with Cooper Hosiery. He was very involved with helping us, as being one of our sponsors. But it just grew and grew and grew and grew, and it went from, that 30,000, that little bitty stage to, and I was reading this in Amusement Business, and for those who don't know what that is, it's like an industry magazine that covers everything from what's going on at fairs and festivals and so forth and so on. And it went from, at the June Jam in 1983, went from that little obscure stage with all those people out there to, at its heyday in 1995, which would have been June Jam 1450, to the largest freestanding stage in North America.
Wow!
Right,
you weren't
right
singing on the back of flatbed trucks anymore.
No. It went on forever. I remember walking off after the show was over one night, and I was there with Brent Barrett, our production manager, who did a fantastic job for so many years with Alabama and the Jam. And we had 2 stages side by side. We had we had wings between the stages. There was 3 levels for VIPs, and it was on each end of each stage, in the middle, and then beyond that we had more wing, sound towers, production monitor areas. I mean, it was amazing. And I'm standing there after things over, and everybody's gone. It's just the stage is clear, the gear's gone. There's nothing on it. And honestly, God, it looked like I felt like I was standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier. It was that big. It was just, and you really appreciated it when in that light, because there's nothing on there, and you can see all the way down, and you think, God, this, like just a few hours ago, this thing was filled with people and artists and equipment, and it's all just kind of shrunk up, I guess. But my God, what an event, what an undertaking, first of all. But we would bring in crews from, I think, Chattanooga mainly. Ben Jumper had a company called Crew One, and they would come in, and they would spend a week. Not our road crew, we were on the road, but production crews would come in, and they'd spend a good part of a week just building the staging. It took that long to do it, because back then. It's different now because there's so many innovations in staging, and you can do a lot more then. But back then, you built those suckers, man. It was scaffolding. It was you physically constructed a stage. It's just like you're building a high-rise apartment somewhere.
Right. Wasn't a prefab thing.
Nothing prefab about it.
But it meant so much. I mean, we know what it meant to the artists. We know what it meant but it meant so much to this community, which was and is basically a small town.
It is.
In that it brought people in. You know, I've lived in other places, but the one place I've lived, and they say, where are you from? And when I was living in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, and I guess it's there even to this day, you go in a restaurant, there are still pictures of the Alabama band.
Yes.
And they're very proud of the fact that was, I'd say I'm from Fort Payne. Oh, that's where Alabama's from.
Really, it is.
So that is the calling. But it meant so much to this community to have. My sister was working. I think Jeff's mom was working down at the Harco drugstore on the South Y there.
Yep.
And my sister actually worked with Jeff's mom when she was in high school.
Miss Betty.
At the Harco.
Yeah.
And she said, people would come in. She was out front, and they had soft drinks stacked up.
Yeah.
And this car window rolls down and says, "I must just your pop." And my sister goes, "Well, he's not for sale. No, your pop.
Yeah.
And they're pointing at the stacks of Coca-Cola.
I'm from Chicago.
Yeah, they were actually from Indiana.
Oh, there you go.
Said, "Where are you from?" Indiana. We're here for the June Jam. But that's atypical, but not an apocryphal story. That was real. It put this little town, not just nationally but internationally, on the map, and spawned outdoor concerts.
It did have a lot to do with
all over the country. And they had no idea. This was not what they set out to do.
No, it was set out. First of all, it was set out because we got ripped off, number one.
Right.
But it was always set out to be what it continues to be today. It was set out to be a charity event. You're going to have expenses for sure. And it was quite expensive to put that thing on. But the net revenue was always meant to be given back to the community. We're a 501c3 foundation. We're a 501c3, and that's what you do anyway. But it wasn't done based on, hey, how much money can we make off this event? Because it'll look good in our bank account. It was based on the fact that how much money can we raise to give back to the community? And the band's logic and thoughts on it, and it continues today with what we're doing now, was let's keep this money as best we can in our own community, in our own area, and of course regionally and even in the state level. But mainly this, charity begins at home. And that's still the premise of what we're doing now on a much smaller scale. Obviously, at one point, I think we had over 70,000 people here. And when you think about 70,000 people in a town whose population today is still like 15,000 people,
right?
That's a lot of people. And to your point. Yes, because Alabama's touring all over the country during this period of time, and they're seeing Alabama in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Topeka, Kansas, and Texas, and Puyallup, Washington, and all over the United States, San Diego, wherever, pick a town, and they've seen them, they love them, they think, man, this is unbelievable. I would love to see them, but they're not. Maybe they're not going to come back here again for another year or two or three. But you know what? They have that June Jam in Fort Payne, and I got a vacation. Guess where we're going? We're going to Fort Payne, Alabama. There weren't really many, and there's not a lot now, but there weren't really many hotels here in any fashion.
Right.
So people would stay in Chattanooga, or they'd stay in Burton, wherever they had to stay. But that June Jam was always a list item for so many people, and they made it an annual event. People got married around here. They made friends here. And a lot of them still come back today, especially now with the the reinvention of the wheel a little bit with the jam.
Right.
And you're right. It was a community gathering that was homegrown, but it spread worldwide, and it's still got that taste, if you will.
And you mentioned the fact, of course, we've got a June Jam. The talk about the iterations, the ongoing, because you've changed over times, obviously, from the first June Jam, which wasn't a June Jam, up to today, and talk about what's coming up here again today.
You mean for this one?
This week, yeah.
Oh, well,
this month, yeah.
Well, what we're doing, I have to actually read some of this stuff because it's hard to keep up with. We have our lineup was just announced for this year. It's going to be Alabama, of course, Old Dominion, Shenandoah. There's a group out of
Alabama
Muscle Shoals.
Boys, yeah.
Lee Greenwood, Montgomery Gentry featuring Eddie Montgomery, Mark Wills, Exile, John Berry, Taylor Hicks, the Malpas Brothers, Castellos, which is a family girl group, and they're on fire right now. So that's a new artistry. That's newness. That's somebody that very few people may not even know about now, but it's a growth. So many of the artists also, again, we've got so many things going on now. We're reinventing a lot of the parts of the wheel. The parade, right. We're bringing the parade back, the June Jam Parade. We're doing that on Wednesday before the Jam on Saturday. Our songwriter showcase. We've got some amazing songwriters coming for that. Bryce Young, Lee Thomas Miller, Becky Hobbs is going to join us this year, and we also have a very special surprise guest that's going to be joining us for the songwriters event and also for the Jam itself. But we can't talk about that individual right now. But they're coming back. They're coming, I should say. And we've just got other events. Jeff and past, of course, but Lisa Cook. The Jeff Cook Foundation is an ongoing foundation that Jeff and Lisa started while he was still with us. And they have an event at the DeKalb Theater here in Fort Payne that's going to take place on Thursday before the Jam on Saturday. We're going to have a cornhole tournament. Teddy's got a silver and coin show on Friday before the Jam, and just a lot of different things that are tied in with the week of activities. That some of these we did before, and we're kind of putting them back in one at a time. Randy will host a golf tournament. We're going to do that next year.
Yeah,
we're not doing it this year. We didn't feel like we had the time to do it properly, but that is for sure on the books for next year and during Jam Week as well. So we've kind of putting the whole week back together, and we still could have a softball tournament or a soccer tournament. We have lots of facilities now that we didn't even have then. And then we also have turf now. So rain or shine.
You mentioned Jeff, and of the three, Jeff and I got to know one another, I guess you could say, better. Going back to Myrtle Beach, and there are some stories there.
Oh yeah.
And then of course when he was named the fishing ambassador for the state, I think he was as proud of that as he was winning the CMA.
He had that big sticker on the back of his truck.
Oh yeah, he had a tag on the front of his truck.
The official.
The official. He said,
and the governor got. I mean, he got a proclamation and all that stuff.
Oh, and he was as proud of that as anything. But the Parkinson's, of course, and I had known that Jeff was ill for a while, was not doing well. But that that takes a cog out of the. You talk about reinventing the wheel.
It does.
Now, I heard something not too long ago. You can't fix a broken wheel, but you can take the old parts and make a new wheel.
That's true.
And that's kind of what they've done is they've taken the old parts, the best of Alabama and Teddy.
Yeah.
And Randy are carrying on that tradition.
That's very true, and I think too, to your point, we've utilized the guy started as four pieces,
right? And
Jeff was playing keyboards with one hand and a guitar with the other, and he's an amazing musician, as well as a vocalist with the other guys, Randy and Teddy, but we over the years we got it again back to Alabama. They recorded so many different types of songs over the years. Many of which were written by other songwriters. There was a thing. I heard somebody said this once, and I think it's perfect. They said you have your entire life, if you're a recording artist or want to be, you have your entire life, if you're writing your own songs, to prepare your first record, your first album,
right.
Your first CD, whatever. You've probably got 6 months to get ready for the next one. And so, having written all those great songs, Lay You Down on Love, Tennessee River, My Home's in Alabama, Why Lady Why, all these self-written songs, Mountain Music, those were songs that were written well before they ever got a record deal.
Right.
And then we wrote many after that. But the fact is, once you're getting songs from other songwriters, great songwriters, Dave Law, and it also became there was a two-level push here. One was from the record label and publishers. It said, hey, we need to get an Alabama cut. We want to get an Alabama cut. And we were getting songs. We were getting songs, just hundreds of them, and more and more and more and more, because everybody wanted to get an Alabama cut. It was right. First of all, it was going to pay them some serious money if you're a songwriter,
right?
And it was also notoriety. Hey, I got an Alabama cut. And when all that happens, is you're cutting songs and spending a lot of time in the studio to do it right, because Alabama never once came out of a studio thinking, well, that'll be good enough.
Yeah.
That's good. No, that was never the case, ever the case. I was there. And so you're getting all these different types of songs. And so what happens is, if you're going to do it live and make it sound like the record, then we brought in additional musicians behind the four guys, but they were there to accent and to add to the sound, and also to help accomplish and take the load off Jeff trying to play, for example, keyboard and guitar. When you can get a keyboard, we can help each other out here.
Right.
And so we brought in other musicians over there, but it never replaced the original members of the group. I mean, the Beatles were always going to be the Beatles. You know what I mean? And
that's the example I was thinking of, is the Beatles.
But it was that. I mean, it was that way, and that a lot of it was done out of, and for a long time, Alabama never recorded, even though there were number one songs, they never recorded, or wrote, I should say, never released as a single one of their self-written songs. They just basically, they were in a place that they didn't really have time anymore. It was like, we got to go. We got to put it was like you're working on an assembly line. Not that we were just the band was putting out just stuff. They were putting out only the best of the best of the best songs that they could get that fit what they were doing. And they turned down songs that would go on to be huge songs for other artists, but it didn't fit them.
Didn't sound like Alabama.
No, I mean, there were songs I'm sure that George Strait cut that were pitched to Alabama, but they weren't Alabama songs. That was a George Strait song.
Right. And
so that's how it evolved. And so they just ran. Mainly, it was like go, 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 go,
Yeah.
go, 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 go. But they didn't. They weren't slack, or they weren't letting anything slide as far as getting the best songs. I can tell you that. And we were getting the best from Dave Loggins. I mean, some of these songwriters, Jim McBride, I mean, Dave Loggins. I mean, my gosh, some of the best songwriters in the business were pitching Alabama songs, and we didn't cut them all. I mean, there were songs that were pitched by some of the best writers that they would go, man, that's a great song, but it doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It's not right for us.
Because once it began, I always say, they talk about the movie True Grit.
Yeah.
Where you've got Jeff Bridges doing a version that's much closer to the original book. I read the book.
Yeah.
Because you put John Wayne in a movie, it becomes a John Wayne movie.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And when Alabama puts it out there, no matter who wrote it, it becomes an Alabama song.
True.
So they tried to stay true to that.
Yeah, because it had to work. I mean, Randy had to, and the guy, first of all, they had to be able to sing it. It had to make, and if they didn't believe in the song, no matter how good it was and how it may have fit somebody else perfectly, they weren't going to record it. We didn't record so many of the songs that we wrote, and I can say we there because I helped write a lot of them, but But there were some we did, that did fit. But it wasn't just, hey, we got to put an Alabama song on this album. We got to do. And the label, as I said earlier, the labels were all about getting outside cuts because, when you're in the industry as a record label, you're tied in with some of these publishers are in town too.
Right.
And everybody's kind of, washing the hands of the other. And so it was good for everybody.
Greg Fowler has been our guest. Greg, I feel like we've taken a trip down memory lane that has wound us both from the PD and Orion, Georgetown County, all the way back here to DeKalb County. So we can't thank you enough. But now, once again, June Jam is on for this June.
June 1st.
Tell folks how they go about getting their tickets.
You can get your tickets on Ticketmaster. Go to Alabama June Jam. They're on sale right now at Ticketmaster. And you can call or come by the Alabama Fan Club in Fort Payne, Alabama. You can get them right here. We have some good ones left. And I will say that there will be no more than 12,000 people is all we can put at the fair. And while we're talking about that, I want to give a shout out too to Eric Dudash and all the folks at the VFW Fairground, the DeKalb County VFW Fairgrounds here in Fort Payne. They have been absolutely phenomenal in working with us. They're giving us their facility. They've never done anything like this until last year, ever. They've had the fair out there. They've had other events out there, but Mr. Charles Stevens, and he was the first one I talked to about it. He's a fine man. He's been with the VFW Fairgrounds here forever. And he and I had an initial conversation about it a couple of years ago, and I said, Mr. Stevens, would that even be? He said, well, yeah, I think we can make that work, and we did, but it would not have happened at all had it not been not only for those folks with the VFW here in Fort Payne, Alabama, and Eric Dudash, who would kind of assume the role of helping me to orchestrate this craziness, along with Tony Conway in Nashville and Outback Presents, who's the production company, and all the volunteers and the people who are providing the food for our volunteers and restaurant Jefferson's, for example, one of our local restaurants provided all the food for our volunteers and first responders free. They didn't charge us anything. And these are the kind of things that that you have to make something work. The sponsors, Fort Payne Improvement Authority, they provided us just many, many, many dollars worth of power equipment that we couldn't have done. I mean, and I could go on and on and on. The water department behind the fairgrounds, it gave us parking that we had to have. I mean, it all came together because the community and the city of Fort Payne, from the mayor's office, every department in the city of Fort Payne, police, fire, rescue, everybody involved came forth saying, we will do this together. We believe in it, and it was a phenomenal success. And of course, the artists who came, and they came because mainly they wanted to support Alabama.
Right.
And let's not forget Alabama, how it all started. So, it's a giant undertaking. We built a village, and it takes, as you know, you don't do it by yourself. It takes a lot of working hands, and most of these people didn't do it for any monetary reason. They did it because, hey, let's make this happen. And I think there was this feeling of, man, when are y'all going to bring back the jam? Are you ever going to be another jam? Are y'all going to have another? And we said, yeah, maybe one day. And we finally decided, Randy especially and Teddy said, all right, let's try it. Let's do it. And we announced it, or the band did, at the Chamber of Commerce dinner here, and nobody had a clue. We didn't even decide officially to do it until that afternoon at a business meeting.
Surprise.
So that night, Alabama's receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award from right here across the street at the Fort Payne Chamber of Commerce dinner. And Randy says, all right, we'll announce it tonight. And everybody's going like, what? What?
Ready, fire,
There
aim.
was no press release. There was nothing. And then they said, all right, now we announced it. Now we got to do it.
Yeah.
And off we went. But thank you for your time. But I got to ask you something, too.
All right, sir.
The bull story, I'm not even going to – you need to tell that one because that's how we kind of started. But when you were living in Myrtle Beach, where did you live?
I lived up in North Myrtle Beach,
Whereabouts?
actually. an old cinder block building. That's
well,
all I
yeah,
can avoid.
I know.
It's right there on the beach, one of those old cinder block apartments.
I get it.
So it was not quite as glamorous as, I lived at the beach.
No. I'm very, Fred and I had this conversation earlier because I'm from there too. And so we know all the local hot spots, hangouts, and haunts. And you're probably up there near the Holiday Inn North and the Sand Trap Lounge somewhere in there. Over the swamp where the alligators were. And they decided That's right. Barefoot Landing.
They decided to build
used
Barefoot
to be a
Landing.
swamp.
It used to be a swamp.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And you would have to stop.
Yeah.
I have had to stop where the traffic stopped.
You did.
While they had to move an alligator out of the middle of the
There
road.
it is.
So
there it is, folks. That's where we come from. But it's been a pleasure, and I followed you, man. I've seen you on TV forever, and you still look the same. You must have a good person.
my mother, who was born and raised here in DeKalb County, would say good Irish stock.
Good Irish. Well, I love the fact that your mama's the one that I knew about those boys.
Yeah, those boys.
Hey, mama, your mama's telling you stuff. You
exactly.
know?
Oh, yeah, that's those boys.
Mama
not
knows,
telling
right?
them.
There's a Shenandoah song.
That's exactly right. So, Greg Fowler, again, thank you. And you got to promise you'll come back because we've traced our roots from a boy from Wilmington, North Carolina, and another boy born in Fort Payne, Alabama, up to. And I know there's a lot of backstories about June Jam that we could spend another hour or so talking about. We didn't even talk about the time the tornado came through and tore down the lights at the football field.
True.
And I remember that. That was a big deal. So.
Yeah, and you brought up something too that I didn't mention because we kind of localized our thoughts around Fort Payne and the Jam, but to Alabama's point, talking about doing things for the community and the state and the region and so forth. What they have also done, and it's documented, is they have been among the very first to give back when there was a need. When you mentioned tornadoes,
right?
When they came through Bama Rising, I know you remember that when we were ravaged by those tornadoes in April that year. It was we lost 38 people right here, right here, and I get chills just thinking about it. That was an event that we did in Birmingham, and all these country artists came together. And Alabama was the lead dog in that for the most part. And then when Jacksonville State, when they did the concert at Jacksonville State University at the football stadium, when they came through down that area, and they've given to outside of the state when the floods really created havoc and destruction in Kentucky. A couple of years back, they donated money from our June Jam fund and concert sales to help in some fashion with those folks. So, and the military, my God, that's a whole nother story about our involvement with the military. You're right. We can talk about a whole lot more than we've talked about today. But one thing, as you know, and you've been in this business a long time, even though you don't look it, one thing will lead to something else.
Right.
And something else, and then something else. And there's a whole lot more to talk about. But I'm honored if you've asked me to be a part of sharing some of the gospel message here. Well,
I have friends who've worked with youth here in DeKalb County, a couple of good friends. And one of them made the comment to me, said, so many people will never know all the things, down to giving bicycles to kids at Christmas that those boys have done for this community. A lot of it's well known, but a lot of it's been done just because they were who they were and who they are.
As who they are. And you're right. They don't, and Teddy especially, well, not all of them really, they don't want the notoriety for that. They don't. I know, because I'll try to promote it other. Hey man, you need to tell somebody you did it. No, we don't do that. And it's good and bad. It's good that you do it, and I say bad. It's not bad. It's just that they don't do it for credit. They don't do it for notoriety. They do it because it's from the heart and not from some headline or something you can put in the newspaper. It's good that you do show it, though, because, and that's where I come in, I'm that other shoulder, because I think it's important that people do know, not that they want it necessarily done, but I think it's good that people do know that they do continue to give back to this community, whereas they may not know that these things are going under the radar. But I like to showcase the fact, not showcase, I like to at least let people highlight, make people aware that, hey, this is maybe not 1982 or 85 or 93 or 98 or 2000 or 2010, but these guys are still doing it. They're still very concerned. They're still the same people. They still live here. They still grow their families here. They grow their cows here. They grow their hay here. They grow their crops here. They are still very much like the song said that Randy and Teddy wrote, words and lyrics by My Home's in Alabama.
Right. No matter where I lay my head.
No matter where I lay my head.
Greg Fowler's been our guest. Greg, of course, getting us ready June 1st.
June 1st.
June
With the week
Jam.
leading up to. Oh, we also have a Miss June Jam beauty pageant again, and that's on May the 4th, I believe it is. So we're leading into the week, into the June Jam.
All right. June Jam, June 1st. Thank you so much, Greg Fowler, and thank you all for joining us for Fred Hunter's Alabama.
Lately, I've been dreaming about you. Lately, I've been thinking of this dream coming true.